This happened in the fall of 2021, when I was living alone in a rented townhouse scene, Southern Illinois. It was my first time ever living by myself, and even though I was technically an adult, 27, with a full-time job and a stable routine, I still had a lot of nervous about the idea. I'd just gone through RO breakup, and I thought the silence and solitude might help me process everything. The townhouse was part of Asmel row of identical units, kind off lane, but clean and quiet, tucked away, sleepy, cul-de-sac, just off a rural leeway. The neighborhood had that rural suburban vibe, lots of bigivenal siding trimmed hedges, wind chiming mailboxes with family names stinkled in them, mostly older folk, but a few young families. I didn't know any of my neighbors well, but I liked it that way. I kept to myself, but almost right away, I noticed one person who stood out from the rest. He lived 3 doors down, a tall, heavy-set man, probably in his mid-40s, with a scruffy beard and a weird bit of standing outside his house at night sometimes, just pacing or smoking sometimes, doing nothing at all, just staring. I'd pull into my driveway after work around 9 or 10 p.m., and there he'd be, leaning against his porch rail or just standing at the edge of his driveway, facing the street. He never waved, never smiled. He just stared. Even if I looked directly at him, I tried toying it a couple of times. I mentioned it to friends or my mom, and they said maybe he was just a night owl or had insomnia, but there was something menacing about him, like he was always watching, but never participating. It wasn't just that he was there, it was the stillness. He didn't fidget or check his or shift his weight. He just stood there like a statue. I told myself, not Tobe, paranoid, but the more time passed, the more that gnawing feeling in my gut grew. Then the noises started. It was around my deptum when I first heard it. I had just gotten home from work after a long shift. I worked late hours, managing inventory at a distribution center, and I usually got in around 10:30 p.m. Exhausted, grabbing a bite to eat, and crashing that night. I fell asleep around midnight at exactly 2:37 a.m. I woke up to a sound I can only describe as metal scraping against wood. At first, I thought I had dreamed it, but I heard it again, a long, slow creaking noise like an old gate opening. Me bedroom was on the first floor at the back of the unit, and I had a sliding glass door with vertical blinds that led to a small fenced-in backyard. I sat up in bed, heart racing, and listened. There was a pause. Then I heard footsteps, soft crunching, sounds like someone walking slowly across gravel. My entire backyard was lined with decorative rock instead of grass, so you could hear every footstep clearly. These weren't animal sounds. I grabbed my phone and crept out of bed. I didn't have a weapon, just a Dell kitchen knife I kept in my nightstand just in case, which at that time felt kind of ridiculous. I crouched by the edge of the window and peeked through the blinds. I couldn't see anything. The motion light wasn't on, which meant either they were out of range or had come in a different way. Ideal 911. The dispatcher was calm, asked for my address, and told me officers were en route. I stayed crouched in the dark, barely breathing. About 10 minutes later, and blue lights flickered through my front window. I got up, opened the door, and met the 2 officers outside. I explained everything. What? I heard what time it started. One of them walked around the back, while the other stayed with me and asked a few questions. The officer in the yard came back and saw that the gate was closed, and there were no signs of tampering, but said he'd write up a report, just in case they didn't see anyone. No footprints or damage, basically no crime. One of them actually said probably just a raccoon, and gave me a look that clearly said, "You're wasting your time." I didn't argue. They left after about 10 minutes. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. The next morning, I went outside to check the backyard myself. That's when I noticed something strange. There was a flat stone about the size of a paperback book wedged under the bottom edge of the wooden fence gate. I hadn't noticed it before. The gate had a heavy spring that made it swing closed automatically, but stone looked like it had been placed there specifically to stop it from closing all the way. It was subtle, like something someone would do if they wanted to come back later and slip in without making noise. I picked up Derek and tossed it across the yard. I called the police again and told them what I had found. They told me they'd noted in the report, but again, said there Wasn't much they could do. I asked Kadif. They could talk to any of the neighbors or check for cameras. They said no, unless a crime was committed. That I felt like I was losing Mimond. 2 nights later, it escalated 8 exactly to 14 a.m. I woke up again, this time to the sound of my back door handle. Turning the handle rattled, gently at first, like someone testing it, then a harder jiggle, like someone trying to open. I sat up in bed hard hammering. I couldn't see anything through blinds, but I could feel Samin standing on the other side. My mouth went dry. I picked up my phone with shaking hands and called the police again. While I waited, I crouched in Theho way, out of view. I didn't have a Guna dog, just that stupid kitchen knife. My motion. Light clicked on and through Atney gap in the blinds. I saw a shadow move across the window. It was a man. Hadn't run or tried to hide. He just stood there. The same 2 officers showed up again. This time, they actually found footprints in the gravel, big ones heading right up to the door. But again, they said, since no entry had been made, there wasn't enough to go on. They promised to patrol the area more often and told me to keep my doors locked. The next day, I installed the camera. It wasn't of those mid-range Wi-Fi Tycoons. I set one up above the back door, another above the front porch. That night, I didn't go to bed. I sat in the living room with the lights off watching Fly Feed on my phone. 2:14 a.m. Camioned when nothing happened. Then at 2:23, the back camera triggered a man's step-a-dento frame. He walked in through the gate like he knew exactly how to move to avoid the motion sensor until the last second. He was tall and broad, wearing a black hoodie with the hood up, jeans and gloves. He walked up to the door, looked up directly at the camera, and smiled. A slow stretched out grin, then he backed it up, still staring, and disappeared into the dark. I called the police again, and they came back, watched the clip and admitted that yes, it was unsettling. But since he didn't break in, didn't damage a property, and didn't appear to be on med, there was still allegedly nothing they could do. They wouldn't even ask the guy down the street to check his doorbell cam. I begged them. They said their hands were tied. That night, I packed a bag and slept at a hotel. When I came back the next day, I found muddy handprints in the glass door, too high up and twallow, like someone had crouched down and just rested their hands there for a while, staring. Eni moved out a week later. I broke my lease and forfeited my deposit. I did care. I couldn't stay there another night. Final straw was the note I found wedged in my mailbox the day I left. It was handwritten in small, cramped letter-lined notebook paper. It said Thekup's leave, but I don't. I filed one last report. The officer I spoke to thought time looked genuinely disturbed by the note. He promised they'd do a wellness check on the neighborhood, but it was too late. I never went back. About a month later, I got a message on Facebook from a girl named Kayla Shasaid. She was the new tenant who had moved into the unit after me. Her message said, "Hi, sorry to bother you. I think you used to live here. Did you ever have someone in a black hoodie hanging around the backyard? I keep hearing footsteps at night, and last night someone knocked on the glass door around 2 o'clock a.m. and just stood there." I didn't reply. I didn't want to know what happened. Music. Next, I work for a property preservation company. Basically, we handle foreclosed homes, securing them, cleaning them out, winterizing them, sometimes even boarding them up. There's been vandalism. It's not glamorous work, but it pays well, and for the most part, it's quiet. You spend a lot of time alone, in houses that used to belong to people. War, long gone. Sometimes it's sad, sometimes it's just boring, but every once in a while you get a house that feels unsettling. This happened in 2020, when I was assigned to clear out a property in Arrow, part of upstate New York. It wasn't of those dying places, only one gas station. Half the businesses shuttered, roads cracked and overgrown. The house itself was a small one-story place off Adert Road, surrounded by overgrown brush and woods on 3 sides. No other homes nearby, just trees and silence. According to the file, the house had been foreclosed after the owner, an elderly one, passed away, and no heirs had stepped forward to claim the estate. Utilities had been shut off for over a year. Our job was to catalog any remaining property, empty it out, and secure it for winter. I drove up on Monday morning around 9 o'clock a.m. with Asmail box truck, and all my gear from the outside the house looked intact. Windows closed, door locked, roof fine, just a load of weeds and vines climbing up the porky. Had to shove the front door open, but house. It had swollen in the frame. Inside everything looked pretty standard. It was dusty, stale air and faded furniture. Then my work phone rang. It startled me because I had no signal out there. I'd already checked and noticed I had no bars, but the phone buzzed anyway. There was no number on Thecalor ID. It just said unknown caller. I answered, and there was nothing, just a low, crackling sound like static. I said hello twice, then hung up, chalked it up to a glitch. I got to work. I always start with photos documenting every room, The living room was cluttered with old furniture, lace curtains, some framed paintings. It reminded me of my Grandma Shaw's heavy furniture, doilies, porcelain figures. The hallway had a smell, not rot, more like mildew and dust.